grocery store girl.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. You can begin when you're ready.
Did it print? Let me know when we're ready.
Madam Chair, you may begin when you're ready. Good evening, Madam Chair. You may begin when you're ready.
Maria, I think you're on mute.
WITN, we can't hear Council Chairwoman Cabrera.
We ready to start?
Madam Chair, you can begin when you're ready. Madam Chair.
While she's getting ready, can we ask everyone to put their phones on mute because there's a lot of background. Good evening and welcome to the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee meeting. This is being done through virtual participation via Zoom, and you can also call in to the phone number listed on the agenda. At this time, I would like the council members that are part of the committee to please introduce yourself, and I will mark you present.
Councilwoman Brigida Fields, 5th District.
Councilwoman Yolanda McCoy,
WITN, is it me or is the sound not working? Because I have my speakers up all the way and I can't hear anything. Council members, can you hear me?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
I can't hear you. That's the problem. Give me a moment so I can see what's going on here with my sound. Oh, Lord have mercy. I still can't hear anything. I'm not muted.
Councilmember
I'm looking right at
Cabrera.
it. My audio is not muted.
Hello? Councilmember Cabrera?
Hold on one second. I'm going to sign on with another device.
I guess she can't hear us.
I'm going to X out and I'm going to come back in again because I can't hear anyone.
Okay.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Anyone?
Can you hear us?
Uh,
We're talking to you.
I don't have time to play games. 2 people are dead, a cop to the hospital, and you're an accessory to all of it. I had no idea he was gonna get killed. Listen to me. You have one chance to make this right. Who they are, where they are, what exactly.
Okay, sorry about that. For some reason, my okay, so I apologize about the technical difficulties. I'll be happy when we do these meetings in person again, but I could not hear you, although you could hear me. So with that said, council members, I apologize. I know that you introduced yourself, my committee members. If you could please, again, just go over the roll call real quick. Nathan Field, are you present?
Present.
Yolanda McCoy, Councilmember McCoy,
Yes, I'm here.
Councilmember Fields,
Present.
Councilman Stodola,
Present.
Councilwoman Darby,
Present.
and is Council President Trippy Congo present?
Here.
Thank you so much. Again, my apologies, and I did not mean to address Councilman Fields without his title. So at this point, welcome to the committee meeting for Community Development and Urban Planning. We have 2 agenda items, and the first one.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, other council members?
Oh, I'm so sorry. And I've been frazzled now with my rocky start. And I would ask other council members that are present to please introduce themselves.
Linda Gray, First District.
Michelle
Thank you.
Harley, Michelle Harley, Fourth District.
Albert Mills at large.
Anyone else? Great. All right, thank you so much. Now we can proceed. And our first agenda item is a resolution to declare Humboldt Park as surplus and to authorize the Department of Real Estate and Housing to conduct disposition. The sponsor is Councilmember Harley. And Councilmember Harley, can you speak to this at this time?
I'm going to defer this over to the administration at this time.
Okay, who here from the administration can speak on this agenda item?
Madam Chair, Bob Weir, Real Estate and Housing Director.
Thank you, Director Weir. So we will have you tell us a little bit about the Humboldt Park resolution here.
Well, the resolution authorizes the Department of Real Estate and Housing to conduct disposition proceedings. That would include the council declaring the properties to be surplus, approve the properties for disposition, and authorize the conduct of the disposition proceedings. They would, from my department, they would include start here today. That would move it to full council and being approved at full council. The creation of an RFP, which would be standard operating procedure for us to have our standard RFP put together. We would advertise that publicly. We would collect the responses. We would make recommendations and then submit that to City Council for approval.
Okay. Do we have any questions on the resolution from council members?
I'm sorry, I don't have a hand. Yes. Isn't this Humboldt Park designated as open space?
Director Weir, can you answer that?
Currently, yes, it is.
And you're putting an RFP out for someone to purchase it?
That could be a possible outcome, yes.
Or what are the other outcomes, please?
Well, someone could say they just want it for $0. I mean, that happens at times. There could be no one that would be interested in it, so that also is a possibility.
But once they purchase it, what is the zoning for use? What's the zone currently?
I believe that it was recommended from the planning commission that it be rezoned to C3.
What is the zoning now? Thank you for that. C3, that's commercial. What's
Yep.
the zoning now?
Oh,
Oh, open space. Oh, I didn't know that was the zone. Okay. Okay, well, I just am a little reluctant to give up more open space, especially in the city. And if someone purchases it to develop it, who will take in consideration the lack of parking in that area?
well, that would be a part of the rezoning. That's certainly, there's public notice, there's public comment period, there is a hearing on that. It would go back to City Council. So the City Councils would be the ultimate deciders in that kind of situation as far as the rezoning.
Okay, last question. So it's being advertised as Zone 0.
Well, it'd be advertised, certainly would be advertised as it presently is zoned.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Harley has her hand up, and then
Okay.
Councilwoman McCoy, in that order.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to add that the residents, the residents in that area were also notified. One of my concerns was that in this particular transaction, that the residents that live in the area be notified and be given the opportunity to weigh in as it relates to their feedback. So there was a mailing that went out because there has been stated that the park is underutilized and there is an opportunity for that particular area to be better utilized as it relates to that community and also to the city of Wilmington. So again, my concern is always, number one, with the residents that live in that area, how they feel about this project. And there were no objections. thus far as it relates to any of the residents that live downtown and around, because there is a notification that goes out to everyone that lives in a certain proximity of the properties. So that did happen. There was a planning meeting that was one of the first series of meetings that took place, and that the residents could call in to express how they felt about this transaction. So I just wanted to weigh in and to share that. And not only that, but there is also another park about 3 blocks away from Humble Park. That park is called Jenny Weaver, which is 3 blocks away, which is an open space as well. And again, because it has been stated by a number of people in the area that the park is underutilized. And when the notifications went out, there were no objections. So we're moving forward. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councilman Harley. And we have Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question about Humble Park being underutilized, it was wanted to find out, did that actually mean anything before the pandemic? I've actually only known about Humble Park more so recently when they started doing like little activities there before the pandemic. And the fact that it was already open space and it was so close to the college, I thought there was actually a great like little area. So when you talk about the residents in the area, I feel like it's more so surrounded by other commercial properties. I do understand that. And just to be able to have that small green space or whatever, or setting or lounge area, I thought was actually really nice to have it in the neighborhood. When it came to, that was my statement. I wanted to know about whether or not we would be disposing this property free of charge or whatever, and how. Like, to me, that made no sense, because when we did disposition and stuff, it would be to nonprofits and such, like that. So for us to come have something to be, disposed or whatever, it's like, what was the, is it a cost to the city of Wilmington? Like, why are we disposing of this property? That's the true question. I just wanted to make that statement beforehand. So the question is whether or not it's still a cost to the city of Wilmington, and is that the reason why we are disposing of this property?
Is that something, Director Weir, that you could answer?
Well, I can answer without having specific knowledge that maintenance of parks is a cost to the city. So I know that as a fact. I have also been led to believe that there has been an inquiry from a developer that is interested in developing more than just those 3 parcels. And that very well might be the outcome. But as far as an RFP would be a response that anyone can answer, that we would hope to have a financial gain from it. And once again, it needs to come back to City Council for approval.
All right. May I
Thank you,
follow up?
Director. Yes, you may follow up, Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you so much, Director Weir. So you did give me information. I do realize that any park is a cost, but it's such a small space. If you have somewhere, because I'm unable to pull up this the resolution. If you have the space or the square footage of the area, the parcel, that'd be great. And I don't have anything else.
Council member, I do not have the square footage of the parcels in front of me, but I can get that to you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I would like to make a comment. I know exactly where the park is. I remember doing a community cleanup some years ago, because the park unfortunately has been used as a place where people gather. Usually, you have some of the homeless community would gather there. There were, obviously drug paraphernalia and things like that that were found during the cleanup. I drive past there and I always keep saying, it's such a cute little space. Why haven't we done more with it? There were some improvements made to the park, painting. I remember I was involved. We try to make it look nicer and better. when I drive past there, I don't see any usage. And the fact that it's right there next to Del Tech, I would think that maybe at lunchtime, the students would come over, sit, maybe have lunch there. Now, of course, like I said, the park hasn't really been approved upon. I think that there is possibilities we could have really made it a beautiful outdoor space for the students and others to use, but it just doesn't seem to be a place where people just sit and gather and sit. That's even the spot where, as they say, the Chinese buses, the mega buses come and pick people up. It would be a great space for people to sit and gather and wait while they're waiting on the bus. But again, hasn't been used in that capacity. If do we have an idea of who the developer is and what the plans might be? Because I know it's adjacent to some of the property that recently some buildings were taken down. So it certainly would make for a nice corner property expansion if there was something that we could really put there and utilize. So Director Weir, I guess my question to you is, do we have a strong possibility? Do we have any idea or plans onto what would go there? And if that's the case, shouldn't we be selling it versus just making it available at a lower cost or for nothing? If I may ask that.
Well,
question.
Madam Chairperson, the RFP does not insinuate that we are not asking a dollar figure and not setting it up in a competitive environment.
Right.
When we talk about the end user, I believe that in a public forum, there was a mention of a developer, but I have not had any conversations with anyone that is interested in that property as to date.
Thank you for that response. Are there any other members of council, of the committee, and then any other council members that have any questions that they would like to ask before we turn it over to the public?
My hand is up, Madam Chair.
Okay, sorry, I did not see that. Councilwoman Harley, and then I have Councilwoman Darby.
Thank you. So one, I wanted to answer Councilmember McCoy's question regarding other entities that received the notification. So it wasn't just the residents that received notification. It included the businesses. The college was notified as well. So it's not just the residents. I think she had mentioned that earlier. And then secondly, yes, there is definitely going to be an RFP to go out for that property. That is one of the questions that I asked as well. The city's not giving away the property. This process that we're going through is like a 5-step process for it to be, the disposition of it first has to take place. Then after the disposition, then whoever buys the property, definitely there's going to be an independent appraiser to appraise the property. And my expectations is that the proceeds from that park will be utilized in another park in the 4th district. And that's what my expectations are. And that is what my hopes would be, is that the proceeds from that particular park would be utilized in another park within the 4th district, in another open space. So, I mean, I can't say for sure if it will, but that is what my hopes are as it relates to the city selling that property to anyone else.
Thank you, Councilmember Harley. And Councilmember Darby, please proceed with your question.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to note that it was saying that it was being underused, but we were in a pandemic and Del Tech students were out of school for the last 2 years, like on and off, not on campus. And a lot of them are still virtual. So I don't know if I can measure the last 2, maybe even 3 years now, that park is being underused. Another piece is in regards to like open space in the city. I'm for keeping open space, but also understanding that if it's not being used, but I don't want to base that off of a pandemic either. But based on the usage that is being reported here, if we build commercial property, when I also read into the legislation on a 03, you can also have a mix of residential. Is that correct too?
Can someone answer to that?
Madam Chair, I heard 03.
I mean, not 03, C3. Sorry, C.
Okay.
Yes, I think that would be a question that would be best answered by the planning department.
Okay, so if we can pose that question to them, we can make note of that. That way, we can all receive an answer to Council Member Darby's question.
Okay.
Let me look. I don't see any. Oh, Councilmember Fields has their hand up. Is that all, Councilmember Darby? Okay. Let's go to Councilwoman Fields.
Sorry if I'm a bit nervous. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just have a question. So right now, this is a city-owned property. That's correct. So if Deltec wanted to put in the purchases for their students, this would be something that they could utilize to make it an open space or a sitting place for their students. Am I correct? And that would be something that's another that's something that the city doesn't have to pay for out of their pockets of taking care of another park when it can be purchased by Deltec to be taken care of for their students. Am I saying that wrong, or does everybody understand where I'm coming from? If we open it up for purchase and Deltec wants to purchase it, they can purchase it for their students. That way, we as a city don't have to take on that cost of keeping up that park. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Fields. Director Weir, that certainly is a possibility. I would think it would be, but if you could answer that.
Well, the RFP will be open and competitive, and the Real Estate and Housing Department would make a recommendation to the council, and then the council would make a decision based on what the proposals submitted were. So, what the council has the final decision on it, and whoever would be interested would make the proposal, and we would do the analysis to help the process. But at the end of the day, the city council would make the decision.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mr. Ware.
Thank you. I don't see anyone from the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time? If you could raise your hand, state your name, and we would entertain your questions on this particular agenda item. Not seeing any hands, then this is a resolution. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember McCoy and Councilmember Harley have their hands up. Let's go back to our council members.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So the only thing that I had to state about this is because of the fact that an RFP, they would like to put out an RFP in order to find someone who has interest and actually has a plan that will, I guess, fit that space. To me, I think that this is going about it backwards, because if they've already had in mind to dispose of this property, there's always a possibility that someone could purchase this property and a variance be denied of being changed from an O to a C3. And I just want to make certain that they are aware that, that there's still a committee that actually has to look at all those different factors before they make that change. So I just wanted to make certain that that statement was made.
Thank you, Councilwoman McCoy and Councilmember Harley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that there's a number of additional steps that are going to take place as it relates to this. And the opportunity for residents and any businesses or entities to weigh in on this. This is, like I said, this is like the second step to maybe 3 or 4 or 5 more steps as it relates to this legislation. And I also wanted to say that the park was not being utilized before the pandemic. I live in the 4th district. I'm always downtown, and trust and believe there was a number of questions and a number of conversations and meetings that I've had. And one of them was my own observation as well in terms of the park being underutilized. So it didn't just start being underutilized during the pandemic. It hasn't been utilized for the most part since it's been there. As a matter of fact, I'm always being asked, what is it? A lot of people don't even realize that it's a park. They don't even know what it is. And I don't know if that's the reason why it's underutilized or not. But it definitely didn't start being underutilized since the pandemic. It was before that. And I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councilmember Harley. I too will echo what you just said, because this was years ago when I was part of that cleanup. And every time I drive by there, I always say it's a cute little space, little corner. It has no grass. I mean, it really doesn't have any equipment or anything. No cute little tables or anything that would welcome people to want to sit there. But, you know, now at this late hour, do we want to develop it into a park when it's been sitting there all these years and nothing's been done? What it was being used for was people utilizing, you know, their addiction, drugs, just things that were not positive for the community were taking place in that little spot. So if it's something that can be utilized by the public as a whole, or if we can sell it and get something that can be utilized, you know, as a business, I mean, I'm not against it. I now see that we have someone from the public who has their hand raised, and we have Miss Pamela Foster. If you can just state your name for the record, and we are happy to entertain your question or comments. And you may proceed. Ms. Foster, you're muted, so you want to unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone. So in regards to the discussion around the park and currently being an open space, I just have a question in regards to if in fact the city has a sustainability department that has weighed in on the decision to dispose of the park and rezone it from an open space to commercial. I also heard someone state there is no equipment, there's no grass. So what is the cost to the city if there's no equipment, maintenance and upkeep, and if there's no grass? So what is the cost to the city to maintain this as an open space?
Director Weir, would you like to answer that?
Unfortunately, I think that's a question that needs to be asked to the Parks Department. That is not a property that is maintained by the Real Estate and Housing Department. So that would have to be a follow-up to that question.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Foster, I will make an attempt to just say that the city hasn't done anything constructive with the space. It is an open space. I, for one, am for open spaces. But right now it's a very small property, you know, children, daycares, if there's anything like that near downtown, no one's using it. The business people aren't going over there to have lunch. Even the people waiting for the bus are not. As a critic, I could say I could critique that the city really could have turned that into a beautiful, usable space. Is that something that we want to look at now? As Council Member Harley said, there are so many steps that we still have to go. This is just the first to start looking at the space and how to put it out there and maybe get a bid and utilize it. The city hasn't utilized it. I don't believe that an investment has been made for upkeep, you know, maybe just general upkeep, emptying the trash, but it's not being used. So they see it as an open space that's underutilized, and it could be put to a different use. So by making the property available and doing this disposition, we could get some ideas and some bids. As one of the council members suggested, let's say that Del Tech were to buy it and they wanted to use it as an open space for their students. That is a possibility. Could there be a developer or someone who has a bigger plan for that corner, going from Market to Shipley? Possibly. But that's the best I can do to answer your questions. However, we can pose the questions to the Parks Department if need be and get back to you with an answer if you would like. If you would put your information in the chat, we could do that. Thank you so much for participating. Let me see if there's anyone else from the public. And if anyone, Megan Micah is wanting to make a comment. If you could state your name for the record and proceed. And unmute yourself, please.
There you go. Megan Micah, you pronounced it correctly, which rarely happens. I have more of a comment, and it might be mute at this point. I haven't been in the area really since pre-pandemic. But I was involved in a cleanup at that park 5+ years ago. And I know at the time there were some contentious issues between the sculptor whose work was on display there and the city in terms of the work being reappropriated without his permission. And again, as far as I know, I haven't been there in a while, it could have been removed. But I didn't know if that was something the council was aware of, or something that had been resolved. So I just wanted to throw that comment out there.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, because no, I did not even know that was going on. And Megan, maybe we were part of that same cleanup 5 years ago.
There was a big yarn bombing with mine.
Okay. I mean, I know there was quite a few people that came out. I think there's been multiple cleanups at that park. But that's something that Council Member Harley, is that something you could answer to? Has there been any discussions about the sculpture at the park?
As she said, it was 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I kind of heard it through the grapevine, but it was never anything that came directly to me as it relates to that. I just kind of heard it through the grapevine, but nothing directly to me.
Okay.
No.
Well, that might be something we may want to just question. What would happen with that sculpture if somebody does make a purchase and they want to redevelop that park and it doesn't remain as open space. Let me just go one more round to see if anybody else has their hand up. Let me see, no council members. And I apologize because I'm using my phone as I'm going to try to resolve the situation with the computer again. The Chief of Staff, okay, Tanya Washington, Chief of Staff, has a comment she would like to make. Please proceed.
No, I was just going to say that I will have someone from Cultural Affairs follow up regarding the sculpture and what would happen to it in light of the disposition of the property.
That would be great. Thank you so much, because that is something very important, Ms. Micah, that you brought up, and we appreciate that. I'm not seeing any other hands up from the public. Let me look again. And from our council. So at this point, this is a resolution. It does not have to be voted out of committee. So we will proceed. I will ask, do we know what the next steps are, Councilman Harley? What should we be looking for? Is this going to be part of a council meeting? I understand there's got to be a full hearing on this as well. What would the next steps be?
Okay, I'm not looking at it right now. Director Weir, do you have anything in front of you? I mean, I can pull something up real quick.
Yeah, yes, Council Member and Madam Chair, if you, at your pleasure.
Thank you. Please proceed. Yes. What are the next steps?
So there's a number of steps, and this one tonight is the first to get started on the disposition and the question of who's interested and what the value is. And I'll reiterate that it's going to be a competitive process so that it'll be advertised. The next step then is a rezoning. The rezoning is also going to have to come before City Council, and then there's going to be a comp plan that has to be amended. And that is, again, subject to public notice, meeting, and council approval. There is also actually a fourth leg to it, where there's a vacation of the park. And that's one of the reasons why we at the administration is proceeding the way we're proceeding, because the vacation of the park oftentimes is preceded by, this is what we want to have happen there, rather than, hey, just we want to vacate it for no good reason. So there'll be opportunities as we move forward, probably into July, if not August, that the public will be able to discuss this, City Council will be able to discuss and approve or deny. And then the final piece of it is that it'll all be tied together so that there'll be the least chance that we would run into any problems in the Superior Court to getting the O changed to a C3.
Great. Thank you for the answer. And Council Member Harley has her hand back up. Please proceed.
I think it was up from the last time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. So at this point, not seeing any other hands, so we are going to move on to the next agenda item, which is an update on the home investment partnership program pertaining to housing and urban development findings. And I believe the director, Bob Weir, is going to give us an overview of this, and then we were going to have, I'm sure, a healthy discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I've prepared an executive summary for your committee, and I will be reading it following this comment. So the Philadelphia Office of HUD's Community Planning and Development, and I'll refer to them as CPD, conducted a remote monitoring of the City of Wilmington's Home Investment Partnership Program, and that date was between May 10th and May 14th of 2021. That monitoring the purpose was to assess our organization's past performance and compliance with applicable federal program requirements. This monitoring was remote due to COVID conditions and was a unique first-time process to CPD and city staff. previous monitorings where staff, CPD staff comes in, they work with us through the active files. This was a little bit different in as much that we were asked for information, we submitted information, they asked additional questions, we submitted information. So it was a little more disjointed than any monitoring that I've been involved in. Program performance was assessed through the review of the operations, file documentation, and interviews. The scope of the CPD's review was concentrated on Wilmington's home buyer rehabilitation program and the city's updated policies and procedures. After their monitoring, CPD staff offered their gratitude to the current real estate and housing staff for its efficiency and responsiveness in providing the CPD office with all the information that was requested prior and during the remote monitoring, given the restrictions. So I believe that is an important statement because we were cooperative and they actually complimented us on it. The monitoring review resulted in 19 findings and 2 concerns over 3 project files related to the city's homebuyer rehabilitation programs. These files were specific to 505 Lafayette Boulevard, and the contract date for that particular home contract was 5/1/2018. The second was 608 East 11th Street, and the contract for those home dollars was 4/17/2017. And for 525 Vandiver Avenue, and the contract date for those funds was 7/28/2016. So they went back quite a few years and looked at these files. The subsequent completion of these projects resulted in homeowner occupied homes at these addresses. So these addresses were subsidized by home funds. They resulted in a home buyer living in those properties, and that were a successful project. A finding of a deficiency in a program performance based on a violation or a statutory or regulatory requirement. A concern is a deficiency in program performance that is not based on a statutory or regulatory requirement, but is brought to the grantee's attention. So it's basically the 2 categories are, was it a statutory requirement or a regulatory requirement, or is it a concern, which means it's at risk? Anyone that's been involved in an audit knows that the auditors oftentimes point out areas that have high risk. So those 2 concerns were of high risk. None of the findings or concerns noted were connected to any financial malfeasance or missing money. So this was not a situation where missing money or malfeasance with money was a concern. Corrective actions to address the noncompliance are identified for all findings. Recommended corrective actions are identified for concerns. The city's response to the monitoring is a process. This is an ongoing process that is active right now. So when we talk about because of the COVID situation, there was questions, there was answers, there was information passed back and forward. Rather than sitting with someone in a room and going through it, there was the gap of communication. So it's ongoing process there. As far as the Real Estate and Housing Department continues to work with CPD to close these findings and address all concerns. The request for the voluntary grant reduction, I'll call that a VGR, is an alternative to having the city repay CDP with general funds if necessary. The requirement for public notice before finalization of CPD actions allows for public comment to be considered. So in conclusion, I think the most important message that I'd like to deliver to your committee, Madam Chair, is that this monitoring is ongoing. It is not a finalization. There were shortfalls in record keeping and following of updated policies by the city staff. We've absolutely had record keeping, and the following of the policies was a shortfall. To date, the city's response has been successful in closing the findings on 608 East 11th Street. There was an error in accounting. We basically posted funds that should have been posted in the certain accounts. We believe the findings at 525 Vandiver Avenue will be closed very soon. That was grounded on a contract that said that the developer was going to give back any profit. There was no profit, and we are currently documenting that to HUD so that that will be closed, we feel, in a very short period of time. The findings at 505 Lafayette Boulevard were caused by the city staff failing to recertify a previously certified nonprofit developer. And we missed the recertification as a community housing development organization, which we call CHODO. What happened at that point is that once that recertification did not happen, the entire project was then deemed to be ineligible. And although that is something that is stinging, it is something that we cannot fix. We did not recertify the developer as a CHODO, and that's the fact of the matter. The monitoring has resulted in our real estate and housing staff reorganization. We have reorganized. We have increased our training and oversight. And one of the things that I can point to is that we've developed a 61-page process and procedure for the home funds and a checklist with accountabilities, along with the training that we've been working with CPD. So, this has been an event that has changed how we do business. The public notice is a requirement during the process, so CPD can take comments submitted into consideration when making final decisions. Final decisions and recommendations have not been made by CPD. So all comments made in writing by March 31st are going to be included and sent to HUD. And they will take all those comments into consideration, given their final management letter. And that would then be the last time that we would have a chance to close any additional findings. And that concludes my statement. Madam Chair, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Weir. Let me just start off the questions from council with asking, in the history, because we understand mistakes can be made. We're dealing with human beings, and to be human is to err. Has there, in the history of the city, have this ever happened before? Were there situations where this occurred with this particular fund? I'm sure we've made mistakes in many other areas, but in this, as far as you know, has this ever happened before?
Yeah, I don't like to talk about failures, but it just so happens that when I was the director of real estate and housing previously, when I took the job, there was a resulting HUD monitoring that they asked us originally to pay back $1.8 million. And what we did is we worked through with CPD and we closed those findings to the point where I cannot tell you what the city ended up paying back to the HUD fund, but it was very, very little. And it was a work through. So I know for a fact that this has happened before. Sadly, I was involved in it, but I know that it's a process. And as far as, once again, as long as there's no money missing and there's no malfeasance, HUD is very willing to work with you and willing to see information that you can give them to see if we can get to a findings closed rather than penalize us.
Thank you for that answer. And one more question. So in terms of the shortfalls that we're seeing right now that we may have to pay back, we still don't know exactly what that is because, as you mentioned, you are reporting on the findings. You do not have a final report. So there really isn't a conclusion yet that the city knows that, oh, this is what we're going to have to do. Is that still a work in progress?
Yeah, yes, that is an accurate statement. And as far as what we did is we asked as a request, not to, that it was granted yet, but if we do owe money back, can it be spread out over a number of years? One of the resultants is that we have program income that comes back to us that we do not budget. We don't know when it's coming back, but it comes back on a pretty regular basis. So what we did is over that 3-year ask is really look at what our historic program income was, and that would offset the reduction in the grant over those 3 years. That's how we formulated that request.
Okay. At this time, I would like to allow other council members that are present to ask questions or express any concerns, and then we will go to the public. Are there any council members? Okay, we have Council Member Darby. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have, I guess I'll start here. In regards to the contractor being certified, why didn't it happen prior to the project? I think I missed that part. And what staff member was responsible to make sure that before a contractor starts the work that they are certified?
Well, certification was for the CHODO. As far as I can't give you a answer of why that was an oversight. There's the existence of the open HUD audit right now, I think it's questionable for me to give any detailed answers off the cuff. So I'd be more than happy to take questions and answer some of those because I wasn't here. I feel very uncomfortable at this point saying in 2015, here's what was going on. So as far as the combination between it still being an open audit and the fact that the question is that inquiry is detailed and I would need to be very sure of my answer, I would have to defer to a time when I could get back to you specifically on that answer.
All right, may I
Thank you.
follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
In regards to, I don't even know what question to ask first. There's so many questions I have. Like, I'm so like, it's so many ways to go with this, and so many issues or problems that I'm seeing in regards to this homes partnership and trying to wrap my head around it because I wasn't here either. And who were the players? Like, who got the contract? Who won this contract? What was the training like to make sure that they knew what to do? Because it's not like it was like one or two mistakes. Because I know we all make mistakes, right? But as a person who runs like a nonprofit in different large entities, there is some mistakes that are just like unacceptable. But like small things, okay, we made a, missed the zero on some, like small things are okay. But some of these things are like, it just doesn't make sense to me on how do you miss something that big? So who were the players? Like who was the contractor? Who were the players in developing?
Well, there was a number of issues, and when you talk about the some of them, if you read the monitoring report, a lot of them are basically the same thing, but they just move across the board. So as far as when you talk about, say, for instance, the three properties that were the most egregious and had the highest financial penalty, 608 East 11th Street was a property that the city developed out of the Real Estate and Housing Department, and it had previously been a lead safe house, and that the money was put into it to fix it so that it could be sold. So a lead safe house is a house that has no lead in it as far as the lead hazards in it, but it was used to house people when they were fixing homes that did have lead in them. The property that is over on Vancouver Avenue, that was part of a 4-pack that the Wilmington Housing Partnership developed. The home dollars were used to subsidize those homes and bring the price down. And the fact that they didn't have good record keeping, that we could easily pull the file out and say, here's where all the costs were. And the fact that the staff changed and things like that. I mean, when we talk about why did it happen, there's lots of reasons, I guess I would say. And as far as the developer on Lafayette Boulevard was Our Youth Inc. They had previously been certified, and the certification includes having staff and board. And for whatever reason, it was never certified for this project, and the file didn't have anything in it.
So I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead, Council Member
Yeah,
Darby.
so why aren't we asking for those entities to pay back this money? Why are we asking taxpayers to pay for these large mistakes? That these are not small things, like someone becoming certified to do something is not, I forgot to put a period at the end of this. Like, it's like different levels to mistake. Like, that's like I have a contract to build homes. Let me follow what the contract says for me to do. So I'm not understanding. It's still not connecting for me. Why are we asking taxpayers to eventually take on this price instead of going back to the people who are handling this money who did not handle it correctly?
I think when the HUD audit's closed, that's a good question. We could ask for the city solicitor. But again, this is ongoing. This is not closed yet.
Yeah, so we really, if I may interject, we don't even have, number one, the final findings. We don't have the final report. At this point, we're contemplating that there may be monies that the city has to pay back, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there will be. The example that was given, that at one point there was an error made in the past where $1.5 million would have had to been paid back, and when It was, by the time you got to the final report, it turned out to be a much lesser amount than that. So right now, what we are getting is an update, because for some of us, this is new, as Councilmember Darby is on council now. And there are people and constituents that are asking these questions of us, which is why we put you on the agenda, and we certainly will welcome you to come back to give us an update as you have more information. We can sit here and ask the why and who should be responsible. And certainly if the city solicitor can answer that question as to where there be any liability on the parts of the people that were engaged in this process and the errors that were made, that's a question we can get back to Councilmember Darby and all of us in reference to that. Secondly, I know that, we're trying to figure out how did we get here? The point is that we're here. So, Director Weird, if you could answer, because Councilmember Darby mentioned taxpayers' dollars. So how would we pay this money back, and would it come out from the general fund or taxpayers' dollars, as was stated, or would it be handled a different way? Because I do believe that there was a plan, a request in place to see how we could go about paying this back, if indeed we're found to be responsible for a payback.
Right. If a payback is necessary, generally what HUD does is ask for non-federal funds to replace those. So at the end of the monitoring, at the end of the back and forth, they basically give you a final management letter, and they say this is how much we went back. What I did is I found that a request for a voluntary grant reduction is a possibility, and made that request. So that I set it into motion that, given the city's financial situation right now, post-pandemic, if we are post-pandemic, I guess, I was looking for alternatives and would give us the ability to have a reduced grant rather than having a cash flow issue. That still has not been decided by HUD. And, again, we're still working as hard as we can to reduce any liability that we do have.
Could you just elaborate on what that means, the reduced grant?
Well, it's basically you say every year, and this year Washington has not got the budget passed, so we have not gotten our grant letter. But generally speaking, every year the federal government passes their budget, and HUD sends us a letter and says, as a participating jurisdiction, here's the grants that we're going to give you. And from there, what we had requested that over a 3-year period, we would have a reduction of 1/3 a year of any liability that would be created out of this home partnership monitoring. I know there's been some questions as far as how does the grant come in and how does it get distributed. This is a public process that we advertise for, requests for proposals. Those are all reviewed and by both members of the city staff, of councils invited, nonprofits in the area. And what happens is that there's a recommendation, and that recommendation is then taken to city council and approved. And then what happens is that those projects that move forward go under contract, and that's how we get to the point where we are here, that we had policies and procedures that weren't followed.
Great. I'm going to go ahead to Councilmember Gray, and then Councilmember Darby, we can circle back to you because I know you said you had several questions, if that's okay. Councilmember Gray, if you could proceed. Thank you for answering, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Weir, for your explanation of the document, especially on Chodo. But I've read the entire thing, and there's some other issues that were just blatant disregard for rules by whomever. Like someone got grant money for 3 homes and only delivered 2. And then one of the homes you were discussing that was sold and people are living in it, but they didn't close it. And they were still charging on that property for a year after it was sold. And that's another violation of HUD. So there are a lot of things, a lot more blatant violations that are here that I don't see how, like Councilman Darby said, could be overlooked. But my questions are, I have like 3 of them. Am I to understand, Councilwoman Cabrera said that the $446,120 is not the entire amount that we owe based on the monitoring report that was sent on June 28th, 2021?
The figure that you quoted was the maximum number that they were using from their original monitoring.
So is that saying yes or no? I mean, is that the total amount from the document, or no, it's not the total amount?
That's a total amount of document, but that's been reduced because some of those findings have been closed.
Okay, so when the findings are closed, we don't necessarily have to return the money?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And that's the ongoing thing that you're discussing, correct?
Yes.
But I have to disagree when you said there's been no money stolen or anything. It's not stolen, but we've given it away erroneously. So that's a loss of money. My other question is, how many approximate programs are funded by the homes program in Wilmington, from Wilmington, with our money?
It varies from year to year. I don't have a number right that I could offer to you that would represent anything other than a guess. But when you look at some of the ways that the dollars have been spent, my professional and personal preference is for these dollars, because they are very hard to manage, is to put them into affordable rental that is multi-unit and is mission-based, versus the previous administration. And when this was done, we're using very difficult funds and putting them into individual homes. It's a daunting task. I mentioned the 61-page document that is the requirements. So, if you were asking me what will we do different in the future, we're already doing it. We're investing in multiple family affordable housing that's under one roof rather than in individual homes.
Well, thank you. But no, that wasn't what I was asking. I was wondering how many programs, like there's a program for elderly housing. There's my program coming up, down payment settlement. I mean, how many programs is the HUD money funding? Approximately 10, 100? I mean, I have no idea.
It would be a guess for me to tell you without looking at it. But as far as, if you look at the legislation that was passed, all the organizations that receive, when we talk about the HUD grant is broken into a number of subsets. So you have the CDBG, say for instance, that's what's projected to be used for down payment settlement assistance. You have home, which is going to be projected for housing. And as I mentioned, my preference would be as far as that type of housing. We'll have ESG, which is emergency service grants. So that is support for homelessness prevention and homeless shelters. And then you have the HOPWell money, which is for housing with people with AIDS. So, there's subsets to that. But I would think at the end of the day, and there's also, youth and families are activities are supported too through the CDBG. So there's another subset there. So it probably would,
Okay,
I would say between 50 and 60 a year.
So all those projects would be affected by us having decreased HUD money, correct? I mean, we'd have to cut back on who we give money to if we're not going to get as much money from HUD, because we're asking for them to decrease. Well, that to me is what this says. But the other thing is I don't want to take up everyone's time. I have two statements. One is a public notice where you're asking to pay back over a 3-year course. And then I have another letter signed by you asking to pay it back over 5 fiscal years. Which one is the accurate one at this time? What are you asking?
3.
3. Oh, you're asking for 3. Well, I just really think that we should have a discussion as council with you, because I think this is going to greatly affect some, if not all, of the HUD projects. And this is affecting the low income and Wilmington residents. And I really want to know when and if we're going to go after the entities that received the erroneous money, the HUD money that I'm pretty sure it was their fault that they didn't register for CHOTA. Maybe we didn't look into it before we gave them the money, but I would think, I want to know when we're going to go and ask for our money from these companies to be reimbursed.
Thank you, Council Member Gray. I believe that the director stated that is something that we can look at with the city solicitor. If there is a way for the city to recoup this money in another way by maybe going after those entities as stated. In addition, I don't know, Director Weir, if you want to answer in terms of future projects being affected, because we have, future projects with HUD money and a reduction in grants. And we also have the concern mentioned by other council members as tax dollars being used to pay the money back. At the end of the day, the city is liable, so we have to figure out what is going to be the best way and the less painful way that creates the least amount of damage for our constituents and for the city. But there's no getting away from the fact of our responsibility. What I do understand is that now you have, as you stated, a 61 or 91 page document that would guide preventing this from happening again. Is there anything that you would like to add to that, Director Weir? If not, I had Councilwoman Darby has her hand up. And then after that, we have others. And I think it's Harley. We have Darby was first, then we have Harley and Field. So I want to respect people's time and go in order. So is there anything else you want to add, Director Weir? Should we just move on to Council Member Darby's question?
I think we could probably move on. Thank you.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Council Member Darby.
Yes. No, I wanted to go, Madam Chair, go back to the last question that I asked. I wasn't able to follow up or do anything, but I do want to make a comment first. I think it's important to understand and know what happened, and because it was stated that we shouldn't be asking those questions or trying to figure that out. And I'm trying to understand, because you have to understand what happened to know what the solutions are, to who needs to be held accountable, who needs proper training, where does the reimbursement come from? Because my issue is for accountability, it's like it was 3 homes and we having all these issues with whoever the contractor or whoever we gave the money to, and they can't follow and make, like, these are not simple as mistakes. These are like real big disregards and violations that happen. And it's like, are we using these contractors for other projects? So now I'm concerned, like as a council person, as a resident, and that there could be possibly we're partnering with them on other projects and these issues are happening and we don't know yet, because we got to wait for an audit to happen. You know, we're council, we can't follow every single project that's going on. So that's my concern, and why I'm asking these questions I'm asking. It's not pointing fingers. I'm trying to understand what's going on. I wasn't here to know what was going on, and all I'm trying to do is figure out what's going on. So in regards to that, I'm gonna have the other council people go, but I wanted to say that on record because it's important to know what happened, so you know what the solutions are. And I think it's funny that we can't find answers to, or I guess you said that you'll consider that we can go back to the entities involved to get the money back, because at this point it's not simple mistakes. It was blatant, like, disregard of, like, violations, where even in one of the findings, they had a homeowner move into a home who wasn't even HUD qualified. They didn't even meet the criteria. Like, that's not a mistake. Those are not mistakes. But I'm going to let the other people ask their questions, and I'll have more later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Darby. And I do believe that it is, let me just check the order. Councilmember Harley is next. Yes, Councilmember Harley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Weir, does HUD penalize the city when these types of things happen? And I'm asking that question because when it's time for the next round of monies to come, I mean, they just allow you to respond to the findings, but we're not penalized in any kind of way in terms of being able to get this funding?
Well,
that's my first question.
Well, the penalty is that they determine that you have not met their statutory or regulatory requirements, then they ask for the money back. But they do, unless it's I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but unless it's a severe case of fraud, you know, the idea that they're penalizing you on your past actions, but not penalizing the city of Wilmington on their future grants.
Okay, and a follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Yes, please proceed.
So I hear what you just said. So I guess as it relates to what caused them to look at these particular properties, do you know?
Well, they went through all the files.
Okay.
So these are the files that were deficient. When you talk about, there's other activities that we undertook that they didn't find anything that was either shortfall as far as statutory or regulatory requirements. These are the ones they found. And when you talk about a lot of these are the exact same thing just across the board. The idea that the property that was totally ineligible, that they looked at the file first, and then when we responded, they said, "Oh, from this point on, it's all ineligible, no matter what happened down the road." As far as the fact that we didn't have documentation of a home buyer going to housing counseling and things like that, they said that whole project is just ineligible because you didn't recertify the developer. So the idea that some of these issues that you read in the first report, or even after our response, we're still satisfying some of those findings, and that's ongoing. But I want to be honest with everyone here that the one file that they pulled and they said that, hey, you did not have a certification here, so that entire project is ineligible.
The entire project. Wow. Okay. And my last question is this. So when these reports come out, it sounded like this report came out in May or June of last year.
Well, it was done in May, and I don't believe that we got a response. The activity can't stop was in May. I don't think we got a response till June or July, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So is there anywhere in the charter that City Council should be notified and get a copy of these reports, especially with the findings? Because it's like we all found out like a happenstance kind of thing versus it being intentional. And so I was just curious to know, is there anything in the charter, one? And if not, what is, do you have a plan, or do you feel as though City Council should be notified when we get these reports?
Well, I'm not aware of any reporting requirements, and absolutely when we would get a final management letter and there would be a penalty to the city, that of course the City Council would be consulted on that. But the idea that it's not over, I think I reported to my weekly reports that we haven't thrown the towel in on this as far as the real estate housing department is concerned. We are still supplying CPD with information, and we are still talking to them about how we can close these all the other findings. So it's an ongoing. So I think it's premature to say I wanted to tell everybody that we might have an issue when we are still working through it.
I guess I have one last question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, proceed.
Okay, you just said that it will be premature to share that information, but I think when there's a finding, that is not going to change that it's a finding. Now, how you close the finding, okay, that's great to know. Okay, you can close it. You're going to have to close it, but the mere fact that there was a finding, I think that definitely is worthy of sharing with council. And especially if you've already come up with the fact of how we can repay this money over a 3-year period. So to me, like it's pretty substantial. It's pretty substantial as it relates to the findings and to the point where you are thinking about how we can repay back the money. I think that substantiates the fact that it's pretty valid, and we can just be aware of it because the majority of us were made aware of this by our constituents, and that really wasn't a good look. They were emailing and calling and emailing and calling, and that's how most of the council found out. So I'm just hoping that in the future, just as an awareness, and there may be an opportunity where we could work together and try to figure some of this out together. I don't know, but I'm just asking that in the future, if there's reports like this that come out, just, let City Council know so we can be in front of it and not our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harley. And I believe the Councilmember Fields has her hands up, and she's next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just like to say thank you, Councilwoman Harley. I put my hand down, but then I put it back up, I just want to say thank you for that, because that's what I was just going to ask. Just to give us a heads up, or, before people, before, the rumors get started about, misappropriated funds and different things like that. If we could just get a heads up about what's actually going on, instead of having to get the phone calls and the emails, that would be so helpful for us. And it'd be helpful not just for us, but for the administration as well. So again, Councilwoman Hart, I just want to say thank you for mentioning that. That's where I was going at next. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fields. And we have Chief of Staff Tanya Washington. You may proceed.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to speak to the audit issue, if I may, fairly quickly. This, I liken it to any other audit that we have, particularly with our outside auditors. They have findings and they give management a chance to respond to them. And it's after we actually respond to those findings and they close the audit out, that's when we typically report it to City Council. So it's not unlike the audit report you just had with Belfont Lions, when they have their findings and the administration responds, and then we respond with the appropriate remedy. And then once the audit is closed out, and then we have the public hearing with council. So that's what I liken it to. It's not any different than that. And in regards to money being paid back by the developers or whomever, the audit, the way I read it, and Director Weir can correct me, but it was a lack of management controls on our part. So the fact that we didn't recertify a developer, that onus is on us. And we should have did that. We should have did a better job in that. And so while no operation is perfect, that should have been like routine, and we should have done that. And I can't put on a developer who was not required to give information that they typically would have, if it was handled properly. So I just wanted to make comment about that.
Thank you, Chief of Staff. And we have the President of City Council, Councilman Congo. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Weir, you made a comment a few minutes back that this might not affect future grants that the city would receive. So even though if we're found to be in violation, you don't think that it would affect any future grants? If I heard you correctly.
Yes. The grants are formulaic based on population. When we talk about the penalty would be associated with the paybacks, if there are any. And as far as I believe that the voluntary reduction request was in line with what we would be receiving in addition to our grants through program income. So, at the end of the day, we don't feel that there's going to be a sizable impact into the service areas of the grant into our community.
So we don't, just a follow-up, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
That's something that we're assuming, or that's something that you're sure of?
Well, if I look historically at what we receive in program income, I'm also aware there's a couple projects that are looking to either be sold or to be refinanced that represent sizable program income dollars coming back. I am very confident that that'll offset the 3 year, third year payback of what I'm estimating right now is probably what is real. But I don't have those numbers, and I couldn't guarantee it. No.
Okay, thank you.
And we have thank you, Council President. We have Council Member Gray. Your hand is up. Please continue.
Yes. Do I understand that the city licenses people for CHOTA? I think I heard Chief of Staff say that it may have been oversight or neglect on the city's part by not licensing someone, so we couldn't hold that person guilty. Is that true?
Well, we did not recertify a CHOTA that previously had been certified.
But we do
I would think that if the CHOTA provided us with false information, it would be a different set of circumstances than if we failed to actually ask for their recertification.
Okay, I want to know, do we do recertification of Chota, the city?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I wasn't aware of that. Well, if we don't feel comfortable going after those people for the money, there's also the person that got money for 3 houses and only delivered 2, and the one that didn't close out for a year and added extra costs after the sale. So there are other violations that we could possibly recoup some of the money. But the option was to speak with the city solicitor. So I would like to set up a meeting to discuss the options for repayment, because I really do think this will affect some of our programs, if not all of them. And I don't know if you can project how much, but I can't believe that a deduction in our grant money isn't going to affect the programs at a time when we really need them coming out of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. And let me see who else, whose hands are up. Okay, so are there any other council members? I'm trying to get to that screen that have their hands up. Okay, we have Councilmember Darby and then Councilmember Harley. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up to see if there's any documentation or proof that the trainings are happening. I'm just really concerned about this happening again, or that it's currently happening in regards to like how funds are managed, because these are not, again, baby mistakes. We have houses that didn't go to HUD eligible buyers. We didn't have people verifying contractors. And like, those are big things. And then I have a question. I'm trying to wrap my head around the Lafayette Boulevard one. If so where is the money if the project was ineligible and sold for that project? Because the whole thing was ineligible because of the contractor, right? So if it was ineligible and then sold, where did that come from? Like, who, you understand what I'm saying?
Well, the money was used to subsidize the construction of the property to sell at the sales price that it sold for. So the contract did not say that there was, per se, money coming back. What, if I'm not mistaken, the contract said we're going to give you subsidy so you can buy down we can buy down the cost of construction for this house. So the money is actually still sitting in that house.
Oh, okay. It's still sitting there. All right. And then my other question, just the last thing, was there any obligation to hire locally or minorities for the homes for this HUD project?
Well, HUD has a requirement under Section 3, but I'm not sure if I don't have it in front of me to confirm that they had a Section 3 event, which basically is a good faith effort to hire locally. But I know it was a minority contractor, a minority owned contracting business, and I believe that as far as that was done, the Section 3 event was done.
Can you confirm? Can you provide documentations to check to see if it was Section 3 and if locally or minorities were on this project too? Because I actually asked for that in the email, probably on Thursday hold on, no, today is Thursday. I forgot when I sent this email. I think I sent this email on Sunday. So in the beginning of this week, and I still haven't received a response to a few of my questions or responses. And that was one of them, was about the local hire of minorities and locals for this specific grant. I haven't received one response back to the email.
I can certainly look in the file and see what we have in the file. I know that the actual owner of the development company was a minority owned. It was a minority owned business.
Okay, does that answer your questions, Councilman Darby? We can follow it, right, Director Weir? You can get us additional information. Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Harley has her hand up. You may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have one question here. I think I heard the council member say that money was given for 3 houses and only 2 houses were built. Well, what happened to the money for the 3rd house that was not built?
I don't believe that's an accurate statement. As far as the original plan was for 3 properties. And what happened is that there was a money that was granted for 3 properties. When the city looked at it, there was a blast zone. We talk about some of the individual situations that took place. There was a blast zone that basically the city would not allow a 3rd house to be built. That money that was granted to the project was granted to the project because they were trying to buy the sale price down. It wasn't granted to the project on a 3-unit based. And I'd have to look at it, but there's a lot of these projects that only have, like, say for instance, the one on Vanford Avenue had 4 houses, but there was only home money put in 1 unit.
Understood. Okay.
So I'd have to get the contract and get the detail to it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Harley. I don't see any other hands up from members of council. So at this time, I would like to proceed to allow for public comment. If you could please state your name for the record. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this particular agenda item? I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time. Are there any other council members that would like to follow up? Otherwise than that, this is a wrap. Not seeing any, then I would ask for, and Director Weir, you are more than welcome, and we certainly will have more questions for you to come back and follow up and give us an update, especially as the findings proceed. I understand there's not a final report, and that may be forthcoming, but maybe, I know we will not have a committee meeting next month because of the budget, but perhaps in 60 days or 90 days, we would invite you to come back and we will follow up on the questions that were asked for council members today and hope to get an answer from the administration on these. So with that, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
To move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor on the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Good night.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. We do invite the public to please join in as we are going through the budget process and the budget hearings for the upcoming month. So please stay tuned. Check out the agenda at the City Council website. We thank you for being engaged, for participating this evening, and please call the council office if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you so much, and thank you to my colleagues for a robust discussion this evening. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.